Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. We will not have a show next week. I'll be out on a vacation with family and taking some time to get away, unplug, and all of that. And so going to take the week off from the show, but we'll be back the following Monday with a new episode. And then we have some other things coming on the movie verdicts side of the house in the coming weeks as well. So you're going to get some extra episodes there. So you won't be missing out. And I'll look forward to being back with you the following Monday. Also want to let you know about a few of the opportunities that we're currently doing searches for, looking for in Dallas. We've got a construction litigation position with a mid-sized firm. We've got two positions, business litigation and then a corporate M&A position. And then there's two different trial boutique firms that we're doing searches for as well, all in Dallas there. In Austin, a family law attorney as well as a special education attorney. In Tarrant County, we've got a real estate opportunity as well as a family law opportunity. And then in Houston, a personal injury attorney. And then in San Antonio, a business and probate litigation attorney. So several things. There are more, as I usually say. Try not to overwhelm here, but just wanted to highlight those as we do. And so if there's any interest that you might have or someone you know might be a good fit for, please do reach out to me, Daniel at varsitysearch.com. All right, today we are in Dallas where our guest is Jim Chester. Jim is a partner at Klemchuk and his practice focuses on technology and business. He assists clients with business formation and governance, transactions, intellectual property, licensing, e-commerce, and much more. He has an AV preeminent peer review rating by Martindale-Hubbell and a perfect 10.0 AVO rating. He's a fellow with the Texas Bar Foundation and has been a super lawyer 7 times. Jim is also an entrepreneur himself, having started and exited a couple of different businesses over the years. He has also taught international business and related courses at Baylor Law, at SMU, at the University of Dallas, and Texas A&M Commerce. And we are super excited to have him with us. So with that, let's hop into our conversation with Jim Chester on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Jim Chester joins us right now. Jim, thanks so much for taking time to come on the show with us.
My pleasure, Daniel. It's always good to talk to you and a pleasure to be on your show.
Absolutely, yeah. And I feel like it's been, with the pandemic and everything, I was just thinking about how long it's been since we've seen each other up in your office, probably a year and a half or so ago, I would guess, maybe more. But it's good to see you again. Yeah. And why don't we start up by just having you share about your firm and your practice and what you all do there. And let's start there.
Okay, sure. I'm a partner at Klemchuk LLP in Dallas, Texas. We're a boutique technology law firm. I'm sort of the white sheep of the family, the firm. Everybody else is either a patent lawyer, trademark, or IP litigator. I'm the transactional guy. So I do business transactions, software licensing, M&A type stuff, typically small to mid-sized companies working with a lot of entrepreneurs and some startups, and some people on the exit side. Doesn't mean they're always small. It just means, they're not publicly traded and that sort of thing. Although The firm does some patent work, patent portfolio management and some litigation for larger companies. I don't personally deal with those guys. They usually have guys, in-house that do my kind of thing.
Gotcha. So what are you finding right now have been some of the either maybe novel or more recent issues that have been cropping up within the clients that you tend to work with? What's kind of the latest thing that's you've been having to learn more about or get up to speed on or anything new like that?
Well, I'd say there are a bunch of things. That's what I love about, kind of the technology-based practice, which, again, I always say I'm a business lawyer. I just happen to work with technology clients. I mean, technology law is kind of an amorphous concept. But because of the kind of clients I work with, it's always something new, right? It's always an evolving area. You're looking at, and I have a background in international business. So there's the trade aspect of it, and challenges in technology and trade kind of go hand in hand. Although, when I first started my career, they didn't. It definitely evolves now where even small companies, they're global instantly. And so what's the kind of ever evolving international situation with China and with Russia, that's always something to keep an eye on. It's a challenge. I mean, it's very, very interesting during the Trump administration, and everybody kind of thought it would flip during the current administration. It hasn't really. I mean, there's some things are obviously very different, but there's still a lot of challenges there. But I think bigger picture, probably the biggest moving target that people in my space are dealing with and my clients are dealing with has to do with cybersecurity and data privacy. There are a plethora of laws that are coming out. The GDPR and now the California law CCPA have been around for a couple of years now. But those are kind of the baseline now. Once you create a high standard for sort of this is best practices or this is what we're doing, other states are now following. I think there's a law in Virginia that's either passed or about to pass. Several other states are right there, kind of there in that position. And so what makes it difficult to advise companies based in the United States is we have this federal system and we don't have a national data privacy law. We have certain aspects of FTC and FCC stuff, but really don't have a national, like a GDPR is all of the EU. But in the United States, we have various states. And so if you're in Texas, but you have even one client or one employee in California, you may be subject to the CCPA and the other California privacy laws relating to employee data, related to clients and so forth. So that's something that is going to be happening for a while. And until we have a national, and I think that's what's ultimately going to happen, we're going to have a national system that's going to kind of preempt a lot of this stuff. Which will make my job a little easier. Doesn't mean I'm going to like it. Doesn't mean my clients are going to like it, but at least it'll make it consistent. But the other challenge with the data privacy is because this is so new, and I'm sure you can relate to this, lawyers don't like new stuff. Business people like new stuff. Finance people like new stuff. Lawyers hate it because we like to be able to tell our client how a certain contract provision or a certain legal, statute is going to be interpreted, how it will be enforced. So we can create standards to comply with it, right? And even best practices. Hey, this is how you do it. Well, when you've got a new law like GDPR, and which is the Privacy Directorate of the European Union, or the California laws, until you've got a number of enforcement actions to see, how people are stepping, wrongly, what pitfalls are, how this statute's going to be interpreted and enforced, it's really difficult to advise. We're looking at, well, this is what we think it says, and this is what we think you're supposed to do based on the plain language. But that's one of the things that makes a lot of clients uneasy, and lawyers especially, as well, as we like to know this is exactly how you're supposed to handle this. This is what you do. And unfortunately, X doesn't always mark the spot, which I think my entrepreneurial experience working with other clients that are entrepreneurial, kind of used to the dynamic environment, gives me a little bit higher level of tolerance than a lot of lawyers,
I'm sure that's true.
Particularly corporate lawyers, or tax lawyers or patent lawyers. But at the same time, I would love to be able to say, no, this is certain. You're good if you do this. But now I'm like, I think so. I think that.
I think so. So you're now folks that have heard what you do and some of the things that you work with daily, I'm sure are probably interested. So I want to ask how you got into this, because I think, you're in a field and the types of things you're working on are kind of not your standard, what most lawyers wind up doing. I mean, I think you're in a fairly, what would be from the outside looking in. You may not think it's fun every day. I think you do most days, but like this is like a cool thing. Like this is the fun thing. Entrepreneurs, the technology, all this stuff. How did you get into that? And kind of, walk us through a little bit of your career path to get where you are now.
Sure. Well, it was a little bit of a winding road. I'm the first person in my family to go to law school, graduate college, I think, at least linear, down ancestors, and go to law school, graduate from law school. And so, like a lot of folks who don't have lawyers around them all the time, what I saw on television and read in books, that, litigators, those were lawyers.
Sure.
So I went to law school planning to be a litigator. And probably the smartest thing I did in law school was I went to law school in Houston, and I had an opportunity to do a lot of part-time jobs during the semester as a clerk, as well as summer associate jobs, trying a bunch of different hats on, corporate, in-house, worked for the county attorney, worked for some litigators. And the thing that I found in litigation, although by the way, I was in mock trial and was varsity mock trial, did well, performed it well in all those classes, and was on that track. Thankfully, I found out that what is represented on television and what's even represented in mock trial is not the average life of a litigator. That's the fun part, the courtroom.
Right.
That's the fun part. And that's for many, many litigators. And the area I wanted to go into, which was more commercial litigation, that was rare. The courtroom stuff and the cross-examination and the that sort of thing was a very small percentage of it. And I learned that through my clerkships and my early experience. And I said, wow, this is the only part I like about litigation. All this other stuff is pretrial hearings and motions and all this. Oh my God. And dealing with the other lawyers. This is not fun to me. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. 10% of fun isn't worth it. So I kind of, shifted gears and went, got a master's degree after law school in international business law and started my career actually as a international business trade lawyer, with a small boutique up in Dallas. And with the whole thing is, I've always liked business. My undergrad degree was in economics, and always knew if I was a litigator, I was going to be doing commercial litigation. And then when I transitioned away from litigation, I'd be doing something involving business, and thought international was really interesting. I had an international interest. Even in college, I wrote my honors thesis on NAFTA. That kind of dates me a little bit. NAFTA doesn't exist anymore. We got a USMCA. So trade was where it was at, because NAFTA was coming in. I was in the mid to late 90s, and Texas was where I was located, and I thought that would be a great opportunity. So I got into that space, and I did that for a few years until I found out, because I was an international trade lawyer, because that's what I was, and it sounds so sexy. It is not sexy. It is boring. It is basically glorified tax law, just so you know. Sounds cool. I was like, I'm going to be going to Paris and Athens, Paris, Texas, Athens, Texas, Beaumont. Those were the places I got to travel. They don't send the trade lawyer there. They send their in-house guys for that. So it was really, a lot of sort of tax work. And so I was enjoyed it to a point, but then it kind of got a little boring. But I noticed that I really enjoyed working with these smaller clients. And for them, they didn't have as many trade issues, but they had other legal issues. And I guess I'd always had an entrepreneurial bent in myself. And so I identified with those kind of clients. And so when I was a fifth-year lawyer, I started my own firm. And when I started my firm, although I had this background in international trade and I knew that I could do some of that work, I knew I wanted to do more of a broad, just business transactional practice. So that was that's when I kind of transitioned. But even looking back in my international work, I realized that a lot of the international work I was doing, particularly dealing with a lot of companies in and around the Texas area, Dallas, Houston, everything else, a lot of it would involve technology. And so the technology sphere and industries, whether software, hardware, whatever, was an area I thought was growing, and I was well positioned in Texas to work with those guys, and I liked that sort of thing. And so what I realized was a lot of the clients I started working with, even when I started my own firm on the domestic side, involved technology. And so I didn't really call myself a technology lawyer. It's just once you have one client that works in technology, you kind of learn that, and they talk to a client or a buddy in the industry. Now you have two clients and three clients. And if that's not to say I didn't intentionally kind of pursue that, because I did like it. There were other opportunities to go into like real estate or whatever. And I realized I just, wasn't excited about it. So the technology piece, I'm not a patent lawyer. I don't have a background in that stuff, but I realized, a few years into this that, when you think about intellectual property, it's really divided into four things. You got trade secrets, patents, copyrights, and trademark. And you only need a science degree for one of those. So you can do the rest. And I'm like, I could be an IP lawyer. Okay, sure. I'm the transactional IP. I always say commercial IP, because there are people out there that register patents or trademarks. And I actually did some trademark registration when I was a solo, and copyright stuff. But really what I like to do is then commercialize. What are form a company to start selling your products, or enter into a joint venture or reseller agreements with your software and so forth. So that's where I really enjoy it. It's the business side. My partners, many of them are litigators, and I say they do bad mood law. I do good mood law. People are starting a company, they're growing their business. Not that everything they deal with is always good news. I deal with disputes. I just don't deal with courtroom stuff. I may have to send a cease and desist letter. But really, it was just one of those things that I sort of listened to the market. I pursued where I thought the opportunity was going to be, and I listened to the market, but I always listened to what my interests were in, because especially early in my career, you've got to invest. You're not going to get paid for every hour of work you do. You're not going to get paid for half the hours you do, especially early on, because you have to learn. And I didn't want to learn stuff I wasn't going to do again, or I didn't want to do again. I had an opportunity early on. And of course, this was right when I first started my firm. And, you do anything, keep the lights on and just to try to survive. And I had some opportunities to do some kind of property tax, like contesting sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get it was brutal. I said, you know what? I'm not going to get good at this. I don't want to do this. I'll find somebody that'll do this for me and get away from it. And so I think that was part of it. I've always been willing to invest, whether it was in a business I'm doing or in myself, in learning. And if you're willing to do that, and you realize you look at, okay, these are markets that are growing. There are a lot of, when I came out of law school, insurance defense was already on its sort of last leg, and because of tort reform and things. And there's still people doing it, but not at the level they were before. And a lot of firms just didn't pivot and get away from it. And I guess maybe the entrepreneur in me says, look, I need to know what's coming, what areas of law are going to be are going to be growing, but that doesn't mean I want to do them. There are plenty of, I could have been, one of those patent troll lawyers. Didn't want to do that. Didn't want to that sort of thing. So part of it was I had an interest, and then I just pursued that. But a lot of it was just, some of it was just luck. You had the right opportunity. But I'm not a firm believer. I think you create a lot of your own luck. The people that work hard are amazingly lucky. Isn't it funny how that works?
Right. Well, and I think what you're identifying is kind of that matrix of finding the, on kind of like the 4-quadrant matrix, kind of finding that thing that you're interested in and that there's a market for or about to be a market for. And a lot of people find themselves stuck, in one of the other two, probably either interested but no market, market not that interested, because that's where you can get a paycheck, but it's not really fulfilling. And so being able to identify and then pursue and go after kind of that interested and market box is it sounds like kind of the way you're describing that. And I think that's what, hopefully people that are listening to the show, like we're trying to help them, see those opportunities that are out there and identify paths to get there, and to not just settle for something, that isn't the combination of those things, because that's where you're going to be your best. Ultimately, that's just where you're going to be your best. So that's really cool. What are you seeing in the way of how COVID is impacting things right now? We're recording this for people listening much later on June 16th, 2021. So what are, we're kind of coming on the way out of this stuff, it looks like, but as far as your clients go, your practice and what's going on with your firm, what's the latest with how COVID's impacting you all?
Well, and on the transactional side, especially working with entrepreneurs, a lot of which deal with software and software as a service type solutions, I actually saw some growth in more companies. People had time on their hands, and so they say, hey, let's pursue this project. Sure. I think from somebody, just speaking from a legal professional, somebody that's been in the profession for 23 years, give or take. I think it's 24 now. I think the 2022 will be my 25th year as a lawyer, which is crazy. I remember talking about those old 25-year practice lawyers. I'm like, I'm going to be one of those in like a year. But law is not a profession generally that embraces change quickly, right? And for a number of reasons, we're risk averse, and we're risk averse for our clients. We're paranoid, so our clients don't have to be, but also we're paranoid with our own practices because there's so much liability and so forth. And I think that technology has been around. What we're using now, Zoom, a lot of the online, the docs, services and stuff have been around in some form or fashion, and people were adopting a little here, a little there. But COVID forced us, if we wanted to survive, if we wanted to communicate with clients or have depositions or have firm meetings, you had to now embrace this stuff. And it was seen as sort of a temporary stopgap for like March of 2020. Yeah. But then as it continued into 2021, 2022, we got a little smarter. We got a little better. Our technology, I got a better camera. I got a better mic. I learned how to, to conduct meetings a little better. I cleaned up my background a little bit, stuff, that like this isn't going away anytime soon. So I think the longer we do something and the more comfortable we get with it, the more it becomes the norm. And I think
Right.
I remember early in the pandemic, when I say early, as far as the lockdowns and all this kind of stuff, maybe June of last year, I saw an article, I think in the Wall Street Journal, that said that the COVID situation had kickstarted the 21st century, which we were already 20 years into, but it just kickstarted because now we were now, traditionally reluctant industries were now embracing certain technologies. Now, I think there's a little bit of backlash now that we want to get back to normal, but I don't think it's ever going to completely go away because we've seen how we can be very productive working from home. Matter of fact, the first couple of months at my firm, we still had, we had remote billing and all this kind of stuff. So we were able to, do a lot of work from home. Even the litigators, not counting March where everybody just kind of held their breath, but in April and May, we had more production as a firm overall during the, those summer months than we normally do. And I think part of it was people didn't have to commute. They could be productive. They could work, more at home. And I think, although some people will never completely want to do this, some of us that thankfully my children are a little older. I didn't have little kids running around banging in them. I have kids around, especially in the summer, but I don't have them, knocking on the doors and screaming at me usually. But for a lot of us, we were able to actually be more productive, which I thought was something that people didn't expect. People thought, it's going to be horrible. But I think for lawyers, the fact that we were at least marginally as productive, if not more productive, says, well, wait a minute. Why do we need all this office space? Why do we need all these commutes? Maybe we can, and I'm not saying everybody's going to get rid of it, but if 20%, 30% of the time we're working remotely or you have smaller office space, it's going to be good for clients. It'll be good for quality of life, I think, for lawyers who want that and embrace that. So I think if anything, that we got to look for the silver lining in all this. And I see that that's one of the silver linings, I guess. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think if nothing else, I think at a minimum, we're going to see a lot more flexibility around how and when we work, that it may not be everybody's just going to work from home or, there's going to be all these rigid, a new thing, or that we're going to go back to the way we were before. But I think I'm already seeing it and hearing it from different law firms and other businesses that I interact with that, we're going to go to you can work in the office 3 days, work from home 2 if you want. You don't have to. You can do what you want. But I mean, there's an office for you here. There's going to be, I think, but to your point, I think it goes to people, having that freedom to choose how they best work and assuming that ultimately works well for the company and for the clients and everything else, or the law firm and the clients. I think we're going to see more of that kind of thing.
It's going to require more individual discipline. You're not going to have that sort of partner looking in at you all the time. I mean, we're going to have. I think there needs to be like a management program built around remote workers. I think that being able, and in law firms, particularly in like white collar professions, because it's a different management style. The fact that people are just there, well, you're in the office, you may as well work. But I mean, when you're at home, you got so many distractions. We're going to need, as individual workers, to discipline ourselves and train ourselves. But managers are going to need to be able to, without being micromanagers, and, find a way to use tools, technologies, productivity, whatever, to appreciate this new normal. Otherwise, what's going to happen is those people that say, you're welcome to work 3 days from home, whatever. Well, you're going to see that, but they're going to take an extra year to make partner or, whatever. It's one thing to say it. I mean, we've had flex time forever, right? I mean, I remember when I was in law school, they were talking about flex time, like for working moms and stuff like that. But but hey, mom, do you want to make partner? Because probably not going to make it as fast if you're working flex time. So just because they're available doesn't mean there's not like a stigma that goes with it. I do think that at least for now, the stigma is reduced and the chance of stigma, but we'll see, people will adopt and accommodate, a somewhat normal reaction very quickly. So I don't want it to swing all the way back like it was. I would love to see things like the 3-2 thing or whatever. And as long as it doesn't punish someone and they can actually take advantage of it, then I think clients will be better off, because if lawyers is happier in what they're doing and they're more balanced with their family, then maybe they're going to be better when they're on the clock too.
Right.
I think that health is a tool that not only physical health, but mental health, everything else makes you better and it brings your A game, and clients, they benefit from that, I think. And so does a firm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, the mental health piece is a big one, and that's certainly something that's on a lot of our minds in the legal profession. And this, how and where we work is certainly a component to that. So I want to ask you about when you first got started practicing, what's something that you learned as a young lawyer that has stuck with you and continues to be part of how you practice today?
Oh man, where do I start? But there are a couple of things I think that probably, and I've told a few associates and young attorneys this myself, and even young. I taught at Baylor for almost 20 years, and I mentor some of those students as they are in school as well as right when they leave. And some of the things that I've said before that came from my own personal experiences, I was both blessed and cursed with having a great early practice experience with some really nice folks, but horrible managers. And so I learned as a baby lawyer that if I didn't want to work all night, Friday night and all the weekend, I needed to manage my manager because they would come in on Friday and something had to be due on Monday and they would panic. And I knew that stuff was due all week. And then, so I learned that when I learned basically to take responsibility for my own projects to the extent I could. And so managing my time and anticipating what was next were critical to, being able to get out of there on a reasonable time on a weekend. So manage the managers was a big deal. And I came up with and I've taught this to my associates years. You never, if you're talking with a partner and a partner is assigning you a project, you never leave their office without the DDB, the deadline, the deliverable, and the budget. So, before you say, all right, I'm ready to go. Here's your project, Jim. I need this. Well, what form do you need? You need a memo. You need a letter. You need an email.
Right.
When do you need this? You need this Thursday. You need this tomorrow. You need this 2 weeks from now. And then what's the budget? Is this something you expect me to spend 2-3 hours on or 20 hours on? And I lived by this not only as a young associate, but I realized once I became a partner and had my own firm, that's the same rule I applied to my clients. I never hang out with the client without the DDB. Hey, what do you want? You want me to form the entity? What's the budget? When do you need this done by? And I found that following the DDB process I have had very few conflicts about, the budget being too high or spending too much time, or I didn't get it delivered on time because I knew when it was supposed to be done. I knew how much I was supposed to spend on it. So those were probably some of the biggest things I would give to a young attorney. And the other thing I would talk to, especially my young students who are looking for their first job, or maybe somebody who's got a first job but they don't like it and they're looking for a second job, is I always say, look, find somebody, whether it's on LinkedIn or whatever, find somebody who has a job you want, like the 20 years from now job you want, because you're not going to get that your first, right out of school unless you really are aiming low. But if you find somebody who has a job you want, and then look at their LinkedIn, look at their bio, and sort of roadmap. Not specific, this is where they worked, but think, okay, here are the different positions they had. What did they learn? What are the skills they got? Whether it was client development, project management, what skills did they get? And then for your next job, just make sure you're chipping away at some of those skills. You don't have to, mirror exactly what they did, but I think any kind of good journey, you start with the end in mind and you work backwards, and then you make your first decision knowing that you don't have to worry about that other decision or the decision after that, because you're going to continue making decisions that move you along that path. And so when I would talk about careers and stuff like that with like a law student will say, I've got these two opportunities. One is, not really where I want it to be, but it's at a really good firm and it's good, prestigious, whatever. And another one is kind of the area I want to work in, but it doesn't pay as much or whatever. I say, look, your first 2 years are all about getting the second job. So, think about that. Which one's going to get you more likely along that path, to where you want to be? And with the understanding that you really don't know where you want to be, 20 years from now, that's going to change. But then you just reevaluate at that time. Those are kind of the big picture things. But the main thing is, listen to yourself. Don't try to live somebody else's standard of success, because that's what I was on an early path to do. And thankfully I switched gears because I said, I don't want to do this. And I look back and probably the most grateful decision I've ever made, other than asking my wife to marry me, was that I decided, you know what, this litigation thing is not for me. Even if I would be good at it, and I think I might have been successful at it, it's not, it would have interfered with the other things that I wanted to be in my life. I think, because it would have been a different way of practicing law. And I might have not liked it as much. I might have not become, the dad I wanted to be and that kind of stuff. I looked at it as a kind of holistically.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so for people that are maybe doing something else while you're listening to this, driving, mowing the yard, doing something, walking the dog. Deliverable, right? Deadline and budget.
So
maybe
DDB.
you got two of those. Maybe you got one of those. There's all three again. We'll put them in the show notes because I think it's really important. We'll highlight them because I think on this show in the past, I think we've probably hit on all three of those independently and separately. But I think I don't know that I've heard it put together just the way you did right there, and I think that's really, really helpful. And so because I do think especially it's funny that budget one. I don't think that young lawyers think about that one. I mean, I think the deadline for sure they probably think about, even if they don't ask as they should. The deliverable probably not thought of as much until they get out the door and okay, wait, what am I supposed to give back? Or they write the memo and like, no, I don't need the memo, I need the letter, like you were saying. But the budget one I think is a really important one because you leave the partner's office as a young associate and then you go and you spend 5 hours researching, then you spend another 5 hours writing it, and then you turn it in and then they mark it down to an hour and a half. Like, wait, what? Yep. And so knowing what that and that may still be necessary. Honestly, like as a young lawyer, you may still need to spend 10 hours to get to what that product is, but mentally, emotionally understanding kind of what it looks like from a budget perspective to the firm, to the partner, to the client, it is really, really important. So I appreciate you putting it together so nicely right there.
Yeah, no, and it also helps with that, especially that budget part. It gives you a better idea of the scope, because you may go out of that meeting with this thinking that you're writing a Supreme Court brief, when in fact they just want an answer to a very specific thing, and it's actually a minor thing. And if you say, okay, what's the budget for this, and in your mind you're thinking maybe 15, 20 hours, and the partner says an hour and a half, you're like, whoa, okay. Maybe I need to ask some more questions about exactly what you need here, because you don't want to write off all that time. Yeah, at some point that starts to hurt, whether it hurts your advancement chances or your bonus chances. Yeah, because it will hurt and I think it's a good training, because as I said, that evolved into those are the communications I have now with my clients, and that really does matter, because if a client gets a bill for a project that he thought it was an hour or two of time, and I bill him for 5 or 6, even though I thought it would have been a 10-hour project, and I saved him 4 or 5 hours. He doesn't know that. He thought it was 1 hour. And so I'm overcharging him. And he's not unhappy with that. And it wasn't that he didn't get good product. It was just that it was a miscommunication because I didn't follow the DDB.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's funny because it reminds me of a West Wing episode where they're in the Situation Room, and Christian Slater plays a couple of episodes as kind of a guest role, and he's playing kind of the military liaison to the National Security Council, and it's his first night, and there's some issue, some crisis happening overseas, and it's literally his first night, and he's the first time in the Situation Room, and so they turn to him and they say, hey, we need this report. Sure. And they like, how much time will it take you? And he goes, 3 hours. And the chief of staff looks at him, and they all kind of have this little grin on their face. And he just looks back at him, 20 minutes, son. like we're going to make a decision to, launch or whatever we're going to do in 20 minutes. So no, the timing and the budget of the timing is important for sure. Hopefully not that important, but important.
Hey, someday you never know. You never know what these guys are doing, right?
That's right. What's something that a young lawyer can do as you've worked around them and like you said, you've mentored them, you've hired them and watched them over the years. What's something a young lawyer can do that really impresses you, that makes them stand out in a positive way?
I would say kind of the self-starter attitude is becoming more and more novel. And I don't mean being pushy or doing stuff that you have no business doing. I'm saying, reaching out to senior attorneys at your firm through bar association groups, whatever, networking, not to necessarily get work or whatever right now or get a job, but merely to find mentors, people you can talk to, people that you can, bounce ideas off of or whatever, establish those relationships with senior attorneys that, and not every attorney is a good mentor. No, don't get me wrong, but there are plenty out there that will serve that for you. But I've, the ones looking back that I've been most impressed with were the folks who just reached out to me and they say, hey, I'm not asking for a job. I'm doing this, and this. And I just, you look like you have a lot of experience in this area. I'm kind of thinking I might want to go into that area, but I'd like to know a little bit more about it. And rather than just, looking for a job all the time and then hoping that somehow a different job at a different firm is going to make them happy. I think when I talk to somebody who at a young age, first 5-10 years of practice is asking the kind of questions that many attorneys don't ask until they're in 20 years and they're wondering why their life isn't what they wanted it to be. And I think that is, that is something that I think more and more people are doing now. Maybe it's just a generational thing, or it could be a cultural thing that we are allowed to ask those questions now. I've always kind of thought that. I mean, maybe I'm a mid-Xer, Gen Xer, but I was a little ahead of the curve in that to some extent, because early on I was challenging the status quo, going, you know what, I don't want to work for, big law firm and be in the corner office. That's just not, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that wasn't my goal. Sure. Not because you don't make a lot of money. It's not powerful and prestigious, which theoretically that's what you're supposed to always want to be. But to me, I could be a very successful lawyer without that. That's not the only way to be a successful attorney. So I started defining success for my life based on more subjective things that I thought were important than the other way around. The way I've always put that is the choices I make in my career are based on the fact that I'm not who I am because I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer because of who I am. And it's an aspect of my personality. I'm a problem solver. I like to help people. And so I do that in other areas of life as well. If I could stay on the side of blood, I'd probably be a doctor, but I can't. And so, and there's a little bit more, more studying even than lawyers can handle. But that's part of it. I would just say the people that impress me are those that are creative, entrepreneurial, honestly. And another thing, kind of alluding to a question you said before that I guess I probably should have mentioned, that also it kind of ties in with this when you were asking, what's something that I learned starting my own firm as a young attorney. I realized just how critical it is to have a book of business, to have a base of clients.
Sure.
And you don't start out with one. Even, first, second year, it's virtually impossible to have, but you need to be establishing a network of attorneys, of referral partners and things that you can call on at some point, because ultimately, whether you're 5-year, 10-year, or 20-year, your value to any firm is going to be directly related to the kind of business that you bring in, because no matter how rough the times are with the firm, if you cost the firm $300,000 a year, but you bring in $500,000 a year, your job is safe. And your job is never safe unless that's the case. Yeah. Unless that's the case, you never can say that's the safest it's ever going to get. And so the more diverse your client base, the stronger your client base. And it takes a long time to build it up. You're not going to start out with $1 million book of business. And maybe you don't need one, but if you want a $500,000 book of business, you got to start with a $50,000 book of business. And then get to 100 and keep gradually. And it's like a wheel that slowly starts turning. And as it starts turning, getting from $100,000 book of business to $200,000 book of business is so much easier than getting the first 100,000. It's just, and then getting from 200 to 400 is just easier than the first, it's just, and gradually it starts to feed on itself because you've got a brand, you've got this sort of thing out there. So I think if I were to go back and talk to young me again earlier, I would have a couple of secret, notes to myself, but one of the ones that I'm willing to share is, dude, start working on your network, even though you're so much pressure as a young lawyer to just bill and be the good associate, right? And that's great. That's part of it, but you cannot neglect the personal branding and the personal network, whether it's joining bar associations or being active there, staying involved with your alumni associations at your law school or college or whatever. Those things will pay off 10 years from now, because it is a long game. So that's definitely something that I've learned over the years.
Awesome. The last subject I want to talk with you about is you've mentioned entrepreneurial a couple of times. We've talked about you starting your own firm, but you also have non-legal businesses that you have started and run as well. And so I would just like for you to share as much as you'd like on maybe one or two of those, because I just think that's interesting. And I'm also curious how that's impacted the way in which you work with your law firm clients, having that entrepreneurial experience to pull from.
Yeah, I would say because of law as a profession generally is risk averse, most lawyers don't really like entrepreneurs, to be honest with you. We say we do, But we don't. I refer to it as the chaotic awesomeness of an early stage venture. It is, it's tumultuous, and lawyers generally don't like that, particularly, transactional and corporate lawyers. Maybe litigators do, but your average transactional lawyer, lawyer doesn't like that environment. So you either love it or you hate it. And I do. I really do like it. I have been involved in a few entrepreneurial ventures. I with a couple of startups involving sort of a lawyer executive suite space that was designed specifically for legal, for lawyers, and it's kind of exclusive to lawyers, which we allow people not only to network but also create a more professional environment. I've done business activities outside of the law profession. My very first, entrepreneurial venture was I actually would pretty much call it an abject failure, but it involved a product, and I learned a lot from it, though. And I think, but I'm not afraid to do it, I've not hit the unicorn $1 billion home run yet, but in most of my businesses, I've made money, and some more than others. The most entrepreneurial thing I ever did was start my own law firm. That was definitely was.
That's an entrepreneur. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something you have to realize. It is a business. You could be a really good lawyer, but not know how to run a firm and really get in trouble. And you need to find somebody who can do that. And so inside the law world, I've kind of been entrepreneurial, but I'm actually involved in an entrepreneurial venture now that it's called Ventac, which it's kind of soft start right now. I'm kind of building it up. It's a subscription-based law connection model where basically technology-based companies like software companies or web developers or IT services companies can pay a subscription to have access to a bunch of legal forms that are designed for their industry. And they can also reach out to a lawyer and get a consult, either for 20 minutes, maybe 1 to 3 times a month, depending on their level of subscription that knows that area. And then from there, if they end up needing more legal work from a lawyer that's they're referred to, the lawyer will agree to give them a discounted, service. So basically, I'm trying to bridge the gap between kind of the free online and, the LegalZoom crap and stuff that's out there, and and my full service, $500-600 an hour law firm for these guys, particularly the small and mid-sized companies, which there are a lot of them, and they need access to these services, and I can leverage these forms and things that I've been doing for 20 years. And just put them in a place, and then they can get a 20-minute call once or twice a month for a few $100, as opposed to worrying about that. And so that's a way I support entrepreneurs. I also think it's a way that lawyers need to respond to the community. I feel very strongly about entrepreneurs and innovators because that's what America is, and that's where we solve a lot of our problems. It's big firm, big companies do all a lot of good things. A lot of people work for them, but a lot of the great ideas and the disruptive technologies come from these smaller companies. And so I believe strongly in it. But by participating in it myself, I sort of vibe with my clients. I sit in there with them when they're talking and they're excited about their ideas, and I know what it feels like. I know the fear and the awesomeness that goes along with it. But at the same time, because I've actually done these things, I can further anticipate some of the pitfalls and hiccups, not just from what my other clients have experienced, but what I've experienced myself on the strategic side. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, really cool. Jim, we've got our rapid fire questions to close out. But before we do that, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet, or anything that you would want to leave with our audience, mostly of young lawyers here? You've said so many great things, so no pressure. But if there's something you would want to leave them with, go for it.
The one thing I would say is, I know a lot of unhappy lawyers. I know fewer now, but I know a lot of unhappy lawyers, and they blame law. They blame that I don't like being a lawyer or whatever. And that may be the case. Maybe they got into it for the wrong reasons or whatever. But I think more likely than not, you're just not in the right environment for what you need to be doing. And if you really were honest with yourself, and maybe get a business coach, maybe get a life coach, whatever, somebody to help you think big picture questions. What's my purpose? What is driving me? And then find out, do you really need to get out of law to achieve those things? Or maybe you just need to find a different, means to get there, but you can use law as a tool. Even if it's not practicing law regularly, you can use it in business or whatever, government. So I'd say, you owe yourself happiness. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your future to be happy and to be successful and to be fulfilled in what you do. And it doesn't mean just because you invested all this money, you got student loan debt or whatever, that you're kind of, stuck in that. It's got to feel horrible and terrible. But it does mean you might need to be creative. You might need to reevaluate some of the choices you've made. and don't be afraid to make a big change. But that doesn't mean you have to leave law completely or leave behind your law degree. Maybe you just need to revisit what it is that's important to you, downsize your life, maybe relocate, whatever. And I think this is a conversation, if you're married, to have, include your spouse in that,
For sure.
Your family. But that's really it. I hate hearing. I feel really sad when I hear of lawyers that are unhappy. And I'm not talking about, and a lot of the reason lawyers are unhappy, they because of that, they get into self-medication and substance abuse and stuff like that. But, I sometimes that's not necessarily related to law, but sometimes it's a byproduct of the stress. But I just hate to hear that. And it's because I really do love being a lawyer. Even if I didn't need to make any money, I would still do at least some legal type work. Because I find the challenge. I love the ability to use it to help people in a space where I'm at. So, I would say to anybody out there who's struggling, who's thinking maybe I chose the wrong path. Oh my God, I've got $100,000 in debt, and I've spent 8-9 years of my life doing this, law school and now practice. If you're willing to make some changes, you might still be able to stay a lawyer and find a really happy place in it.
Yeah.
But but don't blame law for it necessarily. Just maybe blame some of the decisions you made and try to see if you can correct some of those.
Awesome. All right. Rapid fires here to end our time. 1 word, 1 phrase answers. So pressure's on. Here we go. Name 1 trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Ingenuity.
There you go. What habit has been key to your success?
I'm going to say, does it have to be 1 word?
1 word, 1 phrase.
A delusional level of confidence.
I love that. Okay. For the technology IP guy, this is a high pressure question for sure. Your favorite app or productivity tool?
It's a tough one. I'm going to go with an app called Things, which keeps me on track with all the little to-do things I need to do. It's kind of like Evernote, but more driven by to-do lists and projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had someone mention that a few months ago. So that's the second time it's mentioned. So we'll definitely link to that in the show notes so people can check it out. All right, what would you list first in the interest section of your resume?
That's really tough. Because that one's interest. Whenever I have time, whenever I have free time, whenever I have something I want to do, or I have the ability to do it, or what do I get excited about? It's spending time with my family.
Yeah, awesome.
That's my interest.
And lastly, your favorite legal movie?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
It's a classic.
It's hard to beat that one.
It is. It was the most recent movie that we did a deep dive on in our movie verdicts podcasts episodes.
Yeah, I saw that on the social. I saw that.
That was the most recent one. Yeah, that was the most recent one. So that's definitely a highly requested one and mentioned a lot. So a good one for sure to end on. Well, Jim, thank you again so much for taking the time to come on the show. Really appreciate it and wish you all the best with your firm and all of the ventures that you have going on. Hope great successes for you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. It was a pleasure to be here. Anytime.
All right. My thanks again to Jim Chester for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing 2 things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen? And if you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please reach out, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in any of the opportunities that I mentioned at the top of the show, or you just want to visit about the market or what might be out there for you, would love to do that. So please do get in touch with me, either on email, as I said earlier, or on LinkedIn is a good place to find me as well. A reminder, next week we will not have a show, but we'll be back the following Monday with a Monday Mentors episode. And my guess is prior to that, there will be at least one, maybe more movie verdicts episodes coming your way. So more content coming at you. But on the Monday Mentors episodes, we'll not be with you next Monday and be back the following week. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.